catch your death out there.
Pontius. 4 more. And so early in the morning.
What time of day is an ideal time to die?
So they're doing a little bit of a introduction here. Kind of an interesting one. We got Pontius Pilate, we have his wife, which we know he existed. We do know she existed. And they're setting her up as a dreamer,
Right.
which at the end of Matthew is what happens. She has a dream about Yeshua.
Right.
So,
yeah. And we know that Pilate existed because we even have archaeological evidence in Caesarea Maritima. There's you can see this stone really commemoration of Pilate. It says he's like the prefect of Judea, which was a big find because that was the first archaeological evidence that he existed. So many people would have tried to claim that he didn't really exist, but we actually have archaeological evidence that he existed. So.
stone hard facts. Am I right?
Exactly.
Gaius is not an evil man.
Oh, wonderful. Now we have 2 devoted fans of a terrorist.
Yes, he has been ruthless, but he's not like other Roman soldiers.
Associating with him could hurt our reputation with the pilgrims in the tent city.
Do we have a reputation?
Reputation has never really seemed like a priority of his.
That's a good statement right
I like
there.
that comment. He's not worried about his reputation. Even 2,000 years later, he's not worried about his reputation.
It's not. Reputation management isn't a high thing on his priority
No, it's
list.
not. Or he wouldn't have associated himself with us, right? So
For sure.
we are glad that that's not a part of the story. You know,
That's good news.
It is
in
good
and of
news.
itself, right?
I
Wow.
like how they're showing them like processing, right? There
Me
would
too.
be a lot of processing.
Yeah.
I argue that everyone's a verbal processor. And people say, well, you know, I'm an introvert or something like that. But really, it's like everybody needs to verbally process. And because, you know, it actually ends up revealing your heart. And sometimes you don't even realize things that are in there.
Right.
And then somebody else can say, I don't know about what you just said. You could tweak it. And but these are big things they're encountering. And right, they're like wondering about, is he going to start a revolution?
Right.
That's what they're showing here.
At the
They're
very
still
beginning,
wondering, okay, are we going to overthrow Rome?
Right.
If you all are sharpening weapons, should I be too?
Sharpen that pencil.
You have the sharpest weapon of all.
His wit?
That
It's
was
mine. And your pen, you can poke somebody in the eye with it in a pinch.
I could not do that.
Do a Jason Bourne on him, am I right?
Wow.
If you need anything sharpened, just leave it there.
Tell me about the one you're sharpening. It's a dagger. Why don't you sharpen a kitchen knife? Or a utility knife? Or an axe?
Dagger is a weapon, Nathaniel.
You could turn my kippa into a weapon, Z.
Did he say I could turn my kippa into a weapon?
He said you could turn my kippa into a weapon, Z. So I think he's just emphasizing how dangerous Simon is.
I don't think he's wearing a kippa, so I don't know what he's talking about.
He's not. He's not currently.
That's a later rabbinic Jewish thing, I think. But
point being,
he's a dangerous
man.
man.
The train's dangerous man.
Right.
You pretend like nothing's happening, you stabilize yourself, and then sharp move forward. Just change the thing, and then surprise them.
Surprise.
Okay? So this, once again.
You see?
So the curved dagger like that, that's the sikari. And that's what the some of the zealots would use. Yeah, that's a thing.
It's a real thing.
It's a thing. Yeah, so they're definitely showing his zealous tendencies there, you know.
You have brothers, Gaius.
Yes, sir. One.
Germanic origins, and you only have one.
Yes.
Older or younger?
What?
Your brother. I could have you drawn and quartered for not answering me the first time.
Younger.
Ah.
Remember how Gaius was talking with Simon? Mm-hmm. They're having that little bromance.
Yeah.
You know?
They were developing relationship, yes.
And then he was talking about he has a son, and then a servant who's like a son.
Right. Kind of adopted him.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, do you think that his servant boy is going to fall ill and need to be healed?
It would seem to be that way. I'm so slow at
Were
this
you thinking
stuff.
that yet?
No. I'm so slow at this stuff.
They're throwing it out there.
Yeah,
you see that?
I don't know that I was even coming
It took me a while. After we watched it last time, then I was like laying in bed or something, and I'm like, wait a minute.
I think there are times when I am just along for the ride.
Right. People have been saying this for a long time.
Oh, I'm sure they have.
Sure,
I'm sure they have. But literally every movie I would watch growing up or something, everybody'd be like, I saw that coming. And I'd be like, I was so surprised. Right. I'm the best guy for surprises. You know?
Atticus is meeting with Pilate in Jerusalem, and he's telling on me like a meddling little brother. He's there right now, slandering our oversight of Capernaum. I need Pilate's endorsement if I ever hope to get a promotion.
So speaking of Gaius and us just now thinking that he might be the guy, Atticus, always eating Atticus, we know he goes to Jerusalem and he's talking to Pilate.
Pilate, yeah.
And he's definitely the guy who's, surely this was the Son of God.
Ooh.
Oh.
Throwing out a prediction.
I said definitely. I don't really know, but I think they're setting that up because then you kind of know the characters, right? And it's more fun when you know the character, and then he turns and loves Yeshua. So
could be.
Right?
Could be.
Because he oversees everything, kind of sits back and oversees, so I think he'll be overseeing that final crucifixion scene.
I like that you just dubbed him always eating Atticus. Yeah.
I will do better.
They're not enforcing the ordinances I suggested. And worst of all, they have no money. Zero. No one works. Waiting around for a spectacle from the preacher who, I might add, I thought we were done with. And jailing them costs money, so...
How can I make it right?
You could kill Jesus of Nazareth. Make a very public display of it so they have no reason to stay.
I don't know. Do you think that conversations like this were had about Yeshua, on the Roman side? I mean, it was obvious that they were having these conversations from a Jewish religious, there were some throughout the Gospels that were like, we got to trap them, we got to catch them, and then as it developed, we got to kill them.
Right.
But I don't necessarily see that on the Roman side. I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah.
And the reason is just because these towns aren't millions of people.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, if he's healing the crowds, I mean, they're going to hear about it.
And drawing crowds. Right.
I mean,
they're definitely going to hear about it.
I think they would have quickly heard about it, been concerned about it, because they're just trying to keep the Pax Romana, right? The Roman peace, and they don't want anything that's going to stir up anything. Revolutionaries especially, which is what they're trying to show here. So, and this would happen, right? There were guys that would rise up and they would claim to be the Messiah.
For sure.
It would lead a revolution, they would get crushed, and they would die,
Semi-regular thing.
Yeah, this was a real thing. Yeah. So I think that they would have been highly on guard or alert.
On their radar.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Put out the fires, Gaius, until it's too cold, dark, and miserable to stay. Primi.
I know what I must do, Dominus.
His servant is who gets healed.
Yeah.
Is because they're showing him softening up, right? Yeah. You've been pointing this out along the way. Like he's soft, and it began with Matthew, and they just continually are showing him sensitive to Yeshua.
Yeah.
So like when, Quintus here is talking about killing him, you can see
the conflict.
He's squirming a little bit. He's I don't think so,
It's like he's a sympathizer at this point, but later it's going to be it's going to be different.
Right.
I mean, you know the story. It's like he comes to him, and it's a pretty dramatic story. Yeah. So it's going to be good. Now you're setting it up. I'm even more excited.
Right.
Who's that? Who's that? What? Andrew, Philip, it's me, Leander. Who?
Okay, take it easy.
It's Leander. From Nave. Drop your knife. Drop your knife. Oh, no, I forgot I had this. There you go, sorry.
What?
Who are you?
What is happening?
You guys remember me, right? I was the one who showed you out when the council said you had to go.
What?
Andrew's reactions are priceless. Who are you?
Why are you in my house?
I love Andrew. Oh, I want to meet the actor, just shake his hand and be like, thank you for making me laugh so many times.
The decapolis is mostly Hellenist, but it's also a melting pot. Jews, Romans, Seleucids, Arabians.
Oh, sounds messy.
It is. It's already barely holding it together. Your preaching made it... The town is on fire. And not really on fire. Some places.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. We only preach to Jews.
It doesn't matter who you were there for. A few Greeks overheard, some Jews kept sharing what you said. Before you know it, a few Greeks quit worshipping Olympian gods or stopped reading the auspices. That made people angry, so they turned on the Jews. The Jews closed ranks and sent the Hellenists and sympathizers out of their communities.
Oh, man. You guys really turned the place upside down.
That's awesome.
That's great.
This is a fun report.
This is cool.
To the Jew first principle you see here, right?
Romans 1.
So they go to the decapolis, which was, not inside of Israel proper. And but they still went to the Jewish community is what he's saying, but that just still overflowed into the nations. Right. Romans 1:16, right?
Yep.
Like that the gospel should go to the Jew first, but also the nations.
Yep.
You said your teachings were interrupted. Incomplete.
Well, not by choice. We were sent away.
But what you did say spread to the 10 cities of the Decapolis. The tensions we have in Nave boiled up everywhere. The whole area.
The new wineskins bursting the old.
So Philip said that the wineskins were bursting, but I do like to point out when you look in Matthew's version of the parable of the wineskins that they were talking about in a previous episode.
Was it last episode maybe? Yeah.
So new wine must be put into fresh wineskins.
I'll be the first one to admit that I don't get it.
Matthew actually says that both were preserved. Like he was saying, you don't put new wine into old wineskins or it will burst.
Right.
And so throughout Christian history, they've used that passage sometimes as this replacement theology to say, hey, the Jews have been replaced. That's the old wineskin. And now we've got the new wineskin.
This is good. Keep going.
But in Matthew's version, it actually says at the end, the reason you don't put the old wine in the new is to preserve both the wineskins.
Cool. I've never picked up on that.
So that's important here.
Yeah.
So it's not that, Yeshua isn't saying that he didn't, care about the Jewish people or the Jewish leadership or something like that, or the traditions even. But he is saying that he needed these younger guys who weren't the religious leaders in order to really fully understand what he was saying.
Right.
But I think it's important to just point that out because it's been really misrepresented so often in Christian teaching.
Right. And not a out with the old, in with the new type of thing. Like he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And even when he's talking to the Sadducees, he's like, he's the God of the living, right? And so he's like, that's one thing about resurrection, but even just to kind of expand this point, it's like he's this covenantally faithful God as well. So he's this God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's faithful to those covenants, and yet he's starting some new stuff.
Exactly. It's both and, right? Which is very much a biblical Messianic worldview. It's the both and but it's the more here, but he's not just doing away with that, right? He's the Messiah of Israel, right? He's the King of the Jews. In fact, he's killed for being the King of the Jews.
Exactly.
So that's important that he came in time and history to the Jewish people, fulfilling all the prophecies. Right? Not doing away with the prophecies, but being the embodiment of the prophecy.
And he took on Jewish flesh, and he remains that.
Exactly. Forever. Right.
Yeah. Which is, some people, that doesn't click.
Right.
But it's like, no, that's That's
didn't
what he
click for
decided to
me.
do.
Like
Yeah.
that's a new revelation for me. You
Right.
know, I wasn't raised with that understanding at all.
Neither was I.
Brother against brother out there. Is that what you meant for us?
Of course not.
Then come back and finish what you started.
That's interesting.
Next time, knock louder.
What? What just happened?
I think that was an expression of frustration. Have you ever done that when you're like frustrated about something large and you take it out on the small thing? Right? I feel like I do that sometimes.
That's
I'm
good.
like, Right. I'm like, take out the trash.
Right. It's like when you're arguing with your wife, and it's not really about that one thing you're arguing about.
It's not at all.
It's about something way earlier, or this big problem that you aren't talking about. But the trash is what makes it explode. Other people's marriages.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you do? What do you see? I don't understand. There. Between the beats. What do you see? A stain? Is that dry blood? I come from a war-torn country. My brother and I were on a trip to unearth minerals for the family business. And when we returned, our village had been wiped out by a rival clan.
This just reminds me how everyone has a story.
Mm-hmm.
And, until you get to know them and hear their story, you just don't have that sympathy and that empathy and that understanding. And you just kind of think, oh, well, you don't know, blah, 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 And then you hear somebody's story and it's always like, oh, wow.
Right.
Somebody that looks whatever you think is normal and everything's fine and good. It's like, I feel like every time you get to know their story and it's like, whoa, I had no idea.
There's something that you're like, whoa.
Right.
Including my father and my mother. This necklace that has been passed down to generations, that I didn't want to sell for just oats, it still has my mother's blood on it. May I? Please.
There's a lot of like little themes about this conversation, and those, like, you can't assume, like, you can't just make snap judgments.
Right.
It doesn't work.
Right.
And especially if you're going to be in a relationship with people, you can't just have a relationship based on assumptions.
Right.
Even about their story or where they are, who they are, where they come from, or it's like you have to get to know people.
Right.
Whether they're Jewish or Gentile, they're all just people. And then I was thinking of James, the book of James, and where he talks about envy, and envy is like this really dangerous thing, and he calls it demonic. And so it really jacks up your judgment when you have envy. So it's just this really dangerous thing that can ruin relationships.
Comparison is another word you could use here, that they're comparing to one another, and it's like that never goes over well for any of us.
No.
But we still do it all the time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And that the enemy's like trying to get us to compare.
Yeah.
And it's so annoying.
It's a tool to disunify.
The praetor of Upper Galilee. Oh, he slips occasionally and claims the whole of Israel.
Oh, I'll kill him.
Now he's eaten.
Galilee does well.
Yeah, don't kill him.
It's good.
Let me think. His name is Quintus. Revenues are strong. He was reprimanded for use of force after putting down an uprising last year.
That's him, and he'd be all too honored by your recital. He's the kind of man that wants to be remembered.
We are very different, then. See, my problem with his reprimand is that I have been reprimanded for my use of force. So if word spreads that everyone in Israel is heavy-handed, then I have to be even less forceful. How is the repartee?
I tormented him. For you, Governor.
I think I'm going to add repartee to my repertoire.
Oh, wow. Wow. I have to admit, I wasn't envisioning Pilate being so young.
He's such a baby.
He's a young man.
He's a strapping young man.
Young Pontius.
I feel like Atticus is much older.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
What did he call him? A
red bottom something?
They have an interesting friendship. Yeah. They're like old buddies or something.
Kind of weird.
Just kind of strange.
Yeah.
Be right back.
If James and John had been as enthusiastic and hardworking as you two, I'd be retired and living in a mansion. You know, because I'd be rich from catching so much fish. It's a joke.
What? My jokes never go that way.
Yeah.
You think they called them ABBA jokes?
Wow. Zebedee likes to tell ABBA jokes, doesn't he? Wow. First century ABBA jokes. Wow. I didn't see that coming, Sam.
I'm here all day.
Simon, son of Jonah, these brothers were right to question our identity.
There are strict edicts coming out of Jerusalem about false prophecy. Your suspicion is warranted. True or false? Andrew is a fine dancer.
False. Absolutely the worst.
True or false?
True or false?
When Andrew relieves himself, he retches and gags because he hates the smell. We wouldn't know. He always goes so far away in the wilderness to do it because he's shy about that sort of thing.
Nice. Trick question.
I like the true or false.
True or false?
True or false? Let's make this easy. Let's make this quick.
50-50 chance. Zealots were magicians also.
There was no smoke. I didn't see any smoke. Poof. Ta-da.
See the sikari?
We're gonna get a fight scene? We're pausing now? Well, it's intense.
I mean, we're talking about a zealot who loves Yeshua. That's like the combo warrior there, you know?
Right.
Like,
What's
so
gonna happen
this
here?
could be like, you know, Crashing Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Or like, I was thinking Matrix, you know? Like,
yeah, Matrix.
everything goes in slow motion.
Right, and then nobody's injured.
He's dodging bullets.
Nobody's injured. They're just...
John the Baptizer, my cousin, who has prepared the way for me, is now questioning if I'm the Messiah or if maybe we should keep waiting. John is getting impatient, yes? It's one of his quirks.
He has been in prison a long time.
Word reached our ears about what happened in Nazareth. That you said the Spirit of the Lord is upon you to proclaim liberty to the captives.
If you say you are here to free prisoners, then why does he remain?
He rightfully wonders why you would allow his entire ministry to be halted by an imposter king.
Proclaiming liberty to the captives can mean more than just freeing inmates. There are many kinds of captivity that keep people.
Is that what we're supposed to tell him?
No, that's just for you.
We heard our former comrades Andrew and Philip have gone to the Decapolis. Is that where you're planning to launch the revolution to overthrow Rome?
I have something in mind for the decapolis, and it will be revolutionary, but probably not in the way you're thinking.
What are we supposed to report back?
Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight. The lame walk. The lepers are cleansed. The mute speak. And the poor have the good news preached to them. And blessed is the one who is not offended by me.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's important that we actually look at what the text says in Matthew 11. So John's disciples come to him, they ask him this question, and he replies, Jesus answered them, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, and the dead are raised up, and the poor have good news preached to them. And blessed is the one who is not offended by me." So I've heard different people talk about this, and I've had conversations about this passage of scripture that John's disciples are coming to him. John's having this, I mean, he's reckoning with the kingdom's at hand. He's seen it, he's touched it, he's felt it, he's even proclaimed that the Messiah is here, and now he's in prison. And so he has this dilemma.
Sure.
Right? And so he's wrestling with the fact that, like, I'm in prison, and are you who you are? Do we need to expect somebody else?
Right.
You know, and so I've heard people talk about this passage of saying Yeshua could be quoting some biblical prophets and saying the deaf hear, the lame walk.
Isaiah.
Yeah, and the dead are raised, but he doesn't say anything about the captives are set free. And so there's talk about this, that there's different expectations that were laid out for. I mean, we've talked about this before, but it's like there's different expectations that people had for the Messiah.
Right.
And part of what Yeshua does is that he's coming and he's kind of blowing people's minds and saying, I'm here to do this. I have a plan, I have a purpose, and it may or may not be what you expect, but the kingdom is here. And so we're seeing John wrestle. So obviously, John later, he dies.
Right.
But Yeshua is still the Messiah.
Yeah, and they're showing the zealots.
Yeah.
They're showing Simon in his wrestle then, when he's trying to show the other zealots that, hey, how we understood the kingdom breaking in doesn't look exactly the way that we thought it was going to be.
Right.
And then, of course, they're showing that John's wrestling with the exact same issue.
Exactly.
So they're doing a really good job of presenting all this tension on, and, expectations. And as we know now in hindsight, it's 2020, right?
Sure.
I mean, we know, okay, he comes as the lamb and he comes back as the lion.
Right.
But they're saying, where's the lion?
Even we have wrong expectations, and that we think things should go differently or something like that. It's like, okay, well, you are the Lord, you are the King, and I submit to your will. That's what we do. So he's God.
And it's a good lesson on prophecy, because a lot of times, whether it's biblical prophecy or getting even prophetic words today, is the most challenging thing is often the timing.
For sure.
Right? It's
right.
And this is not a biblical passage, but the devil's in the expectations, right? And this is where we can really end up even forcing things that aren't supposed to be there.
Out of impatience, right?
I'm thinking of Abraham and Hagar.
Right.
I mean, God gives this great promise to Abraham. It's biblical. It was right. It was this prophetic word that would happen, but he got impatient and he wanted to make it happen in his own timing.
Right.
And so this is, and yet I think John is also, I don't think it's a crisis of faith for John. Some people present it that way.
Right.
I think it's a crisis of expectations and timing.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Like, help me understand.
Right.
And Yeshua's answering him like, hey, these are evidences that the kingdom of heaven has broken in, that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And that would be proof to him, wow, you're right, because he knows the scroll of Isaiah. He knows what it says.
I think it's important to note, too, that he doesn't go back, he doesn't say to John's disciples, go back and say, John, you're screwing up because you asked me this question. Right? He actually goes in the order of this passage, this question's asked, he answers, and then he honors John.
Did my response to the baptizer's disciples sound to any of you like a rebuke?
Yes.
I can always count on you, Nathaniel. Many of you were baptized by John. I myself was baptized by him. You heard how strong he was, how passionately he believed. And yet now, even he has questions. When you went to the wilderness to see him, did you expect to see a reed shaken by the wind? Someone in fine clothing, like those in king's courts? Or did you go to see a prophet?
Prophet.
A prophet? Yes. And I tell you, John is who Isaiah and Malachi spoke of. What did they say, Big James?
Behold, I send my messenger before you, who will prepare the way before you.
Yes, and this should tell you something. Among those born of women, none is greater than John. And even he has questions.
Another demon-possessed blasphemer, and you call him great. He called your religious leaders, you and men of God, vipers! Are you going to say something?
I think his silence is his response.
And here's what's so wonderful, though. None are greater than John here on earth. In the kingdom of God, the one who is the least is even greater than he. And John himself would say the same.
I mean, this is such an interesting passage here because he's talking about how, John was the greatest, or he had this great privilege, of being the forerunner of Messiah.
Yeah.
But then he says he's the least compared to those in the kingdom of heaven.
Right.
So it's just kind of like what's going on here.
Sure.
But clearly Yeshua is talking about the fact that the new covenant era is breaking in. Yeah. And John's like the greatest man who lived here and had this great privilege, but he's actually saying he's going to die before he sees the new covenant era dawn.
Interesting.
Right? Before Yeshua dies and resurrects and the outpouring of the Holy Spirit in Acts chapter 2. So, I mean, we're seeing that this great access, the breaking into the kingdom is the great availability of the kingdom of heaven through what? Through the blood of Yeshua, through the forgiveness of sin forever, and then the empowerment of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
So, I mean, that's what John, he didn't have access to all of that.
Wow.
And so that's now, here we are, everybody after is like, wow, what a privilege that we get to walk in that.
You and those in your order say John has a demon because he lived in the wilderness, preaching repentance while refusing bread and drink. And now the Son of Man comes, preaching salvation while eating and drinking and dancing. And I'm called a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. It doesn't matter what is put in front of you. You will reject it.
I love how Yeshua's comparing himself and John here, and it's like, he can't win for trying.
For sure.
John doesn't drink, and he's rejected. Yeshua says, "I dance," and you call me a drunkard, and it's like, so this is how it works, right? No matter what you do. You're going to have your haters. Right. I mean, haters going to hate, Well, like, this is just like, it's not about these it's about expectations. Yeah. And they have these wrong expectations, but it's really something, Yeshua's going deeper, though. Mm-hmm. He's saying, it seems like it's about expectations, but really he's going right after the heart.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just digging right into it, and saying that and he's like looking right at the, the religious leader there, and he's like saying, like, you, the Son of Man, like is showing up, and you're not recognizing the hour that's upon you.
Yeah, I think there's things that he's saying here that are equivalent to what he says in various Gospels. It's like, if you actually read and believed Moses, you would see me, because even Moses said, "There's one coming after me that's greater." That's good. And so he calls them out because they're the teachers, right? It's like they're held to a higher standard.
Exactly.
And so he at times will get like really direct with some of these religious leader guys, and so I think it's a pretty accurate portrayal there.
That's a great scene.
Wisdom means nothing if it's not acted on. Wisdom is justified by all her works.
Wisdom is justified by all her works. So he's talking about the personification of wisdom, right? And we saw this in Proverbs, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then we talked about how even in John 1, right, the Word became flesh, this logos reality, and this is him here now identifying himself with this personification of wisdom. And I mean, it's like he's saying things that are intentionally provoking, but also he's saying that the miracles actually demonstrate who he is.
It's good.
Like that's what he keeps doing over and over. It's like, hey, the proof's in the pudding, right? It's like, well, who else can heal like this?
Right.
I mean, that's what they're all confronted with the kingdom of heaven breaking in.
Yeah.
And this is what the evidence is to John. It's like, but this is what's happened. The deaf are hearing, the blind are seeing, the dead are being raised.
Right.
The kingdom of heaven is at hand.
And it reminds me of later on, Paul does something similar, like 1 Corinthians, he's talking about, I didn't come to you with like eloquent speech, but I came with you a demonstration of the Holy Spirit's power. Right? So it's like, believe these miraculous signs. When it's demonstrated, it's pointing to Yeshua. That's what the signs are a demonstration of. It's that the kingdom is breaking in, the kingdom is at hand, Yeshua is who he says he is. Period.
What? Did it work?
I'm afraid to look.
It's time, Shula.
Did it?
Yes, it worked. I can see you're not as handsome as you said.
He knew it was coming. He knew it was coming.
Wow. That's hilarious.
Thank you. I don't remember everything being so bright.
How long has it been?
Over 10 years. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, friend. What about him?
I'm fine. This is about you. This is about her. Some other time, maybe.
We'll see. You're a true friend. Well now, friends, we must all get home. Barnaby, she will still need you to walk her home. It's getting late. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Thank you.
I'll take this from you. I don't think you'll need it anymore.
No.
Wait a minute.
There it is.
My leg?
There it is. And there it is.
Did you?
Of course you did, Barnaby. Who else?
Who else?
Yeah.
You think you sure got picked up?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
You're welcome, Barnaby.
Good.
Now, get Shula to her home. You can do it faster than normal tonight, huh?
He would be dancing for sure. He's a dancer.
For sure.
Wow. What a fun job.
Right?
What a fun
Pharisees around for this one.
Still, just as fun.
That's a good. I love that they're using the word fun.
Fun.
I know sometimes fun's like it's almost like too casual of a word or something, but like life in God is fun.
Yes.
Like joy is the fuel of the kingdom, and doing ministry is fun.
Indeed.
And seeing what God does in people's lives,
yes,
whether it's physical healings or spiritual healings, inside or outside. I mean, man, it's so fun. There is nothing like it.
There's nothing better than a transformed life.
Nothing like it.
Right?
Oh man, there's
nothing better than the presence of the Lord. Yeah.
It's so fun. It's so fun. It's so life-giving. Like, not just to the, what's a good example? Not just to the person being healed, but to the friend.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is, wow, what a good depiction of friendship, too.
Yeah.
Of just, love it. If you like our videos, please help us spread a biblical Messianic worldview by donating to Grafted.
I think we're gonna see Smeagol.
More Abba jokes, Sam. I think the Abba jokes might become a theme.
That was